Now for our featured story of the day. Let's discuss the Bitcoin price soaring and exploding by over 1,500%, according to the on-chain analyst, Willy Woo. Here's his timeline. I'm going to be breaking down for you. Let's freaking go. And welcome everyone just joining the stream. The on-chain analyst, Willy Woo, believes Bitcoin is on track to increase by over 1,500% based on one main driver. That's right. He tells his 1.1 million followers on X that increasing adoption of Bitcoin can drive the top performing digital asset to 1 million per coin within 11 years. Now I'm seeing a lot of good omens with these numbers. 1.1 is ultimately an 11, and he says 11 years. And then we got another one over here just saying happy 11/11. I'm even rocking the 11 jersey today, for Christ's sake. Anyways, according to Woo, there's a historic correlation between Bitcoin's value and the number of Bitcoin users, which he expects to continue to increase based on his growth curve model, quoting Willy here, on track for $1 million per Bitcoin as fair value by 2035. That is, if we take the user growth curve as a guide for valid valuation. Remember, I said fair value and not peak value in bull market hype. He continues, in the early days, prices was slow to catch up to the user count. Bitcoin didn't even have a price until the 1,000th user came in. Thanks to the blockchain, we have high resolution view of users using forensic clustering of addresses into entities. Price discovery started with early markets like New Liberty, Standard, and Mt. Gox. By August 2011, Bitstamp launched and we had multiple global exchanges to properly price the asset, which is the shaded region you can see in this chart. And after 2012, the price pretty much oscillated around the increasing user count. And you can see here the NLS electricity pricing, the demand pricing, and the Mt. Gox global price discovery on this adoption curve for the biddies, showing Bitcoin's total user count. Now, Woo believes that Bitcoin is still early on in adoption, comparing the asset to the internet's adoption rate, quoting him again alongside this chart that shows you the Bitcoin adoption S-curve. Look at that. Bitcoin is at 4.7% world adoption. This is the same as January 1999 for internet adoption. You are still early, and that's backed by the best data available. So yeah, comparing, look at that chart. Bitcoin, you can see in the yellow in the bottom, 4.7% compared to that of the internet. We are just getting started, yo. We about to see some craziness in the price action, in my humble opinion. Let me know if you agree with Willy. 1,500% explosion from here. And if you're on the math, we're talking about a $1 million Bitcoin price action. Let me know if you agree or disagree with the on-chain analyst. I personally feel 1 million is inevitable. We can see 1 million this cycle. It's a possibility. Bitcoin has no top. Fiat has no bottom. But I think the most likely scenario would be next cycle. Next cycle would be 2028 to 2032. They said halving will probably take place sometime in March, right? According to the time chain calendar right now, but that can change as it's depending upon the block. We know every 10 minutes we get a new block. But regardless, 1 million is inevitable. I feel this cycle easy multiple six figures. I say the low 222,000. My bull scenario this cycle 750,000. I think most likely scenario somewhere in between. So let's just hypothetically lean towards the low. And let's just hypothetically say the cycle peak occurs in 2025, sometime next year, because that's what history has shown us. And let's hypothetically say that $250,000 Bitcoin price peak 4x's the following cycle. That's an easy $1 million. You break down the math don't lie. Now, hypothetically, what if we hit 500,000 the cycle? It would only require a 2x between the next 4-year epoch, right? To hit that $1 million target. So I'm sticking with $1 million by the year 2029. And I want to know your thoughts. There's so many bullish catalysts. It's not even funny, right? Number one, we have the demand shock, which we've already witnessed this year with the inflows of the ETFs since January 11th. The institutions now hold collectively, 900,000 Bitcoin. Crazy, considering there could only ever be 21 million Bitcoin in existence. So BlackRock is about to flip MicroStrategy as being the largest, or not MicroStrategy, my bad, GBTC. BlackRock's about to flip GBTC with holding over 300,000 Bitcoin. MicroStrategy only has like 220,000-ish. So you already know, just between the major institutions, it's crazy because The game theory is in full effect. They're all trying to outcompete one another and front run one another. But what's going to happen when we get the supply shock? They say roughly 1.8 million biddies even available anymore on the exchanges. This will eventually run dry. Analysts predict this can run dry this year, potentially within the next 6 months, if not 6 months, definitely within the next 12 months. When there's no Bitcoin available, what's going to happen? You got to bribe the long-term hodlers to sell their precious biddies. And the only way to bribe them is by increasing the dollar value, right? So you already know when we get the supply shock game on, prices go up. Also, you have to consider we have ETFs just launched out of Hong Kong, more inflows. We have ETF, which is going to go live out of Australia. We have ETFs, which are going to go live in El Salvador and other parts of the world. We also have Mr. 100 continuing to accumulate. They now have like 70, 80,000 biddies. I can't even keep up. They're purchasing mass amounts virtually every day. They just made like another 3,000 plus Bitcoin purchase. We covered on yesterday's show. Who is this mysterious entity? Some say it's an exchange such as Upbit. Some would argue it's Abu Dhabi or a rich nation out of the Middle East, potentially Qatar or sovereign wealth fund. What happens when we get more nation state adoption following in the footsteps of El Salvador and Nayib Bukele? What happens when we get more the fair accounting thing changes December of this year as well is a pretty big deal. As Thaler mentioned, the fair accounting practices, that's another bullish thing. More institutions likely to invest into the Bitcoin. Let's not underestimate the retail. I understand retail is a little slow in the head. They like to buy at the top and sell at the bottom. It's just the nature of the human being. It is what it is. The previous cycle was driven primarily from retail. We hit 69,000. I believe that was November 10th, 2021. And I personally am in the camp that believes we would have surpassed 100,000 Bitcoin previous cycle if we didn't have bad actors such as Bankman-Fried offloading your Bitcoin with his criminal activity. And hence why he is serving 25 years in prison right now, right? So crazy, but there's a lot of bullishness in the market, a lot of macroeconomic factors. And what's the current strength of the dollar in the US banking system? It couldn't have been weaker or can't be weaker right now. We had regional bank crisis last year, which sparked the price action to Bitcoin. That was Q1. The banks are still in the same predicament. They're dry. They don't have the money, right? Don't matter how much you're insured with the FDIC. If there's a bank run and everyone demands their money, there is no money to pay you guys. That's why take all of your fiat crap out of the bank and put it into Bitcoin, not financial advice. But one thing I know for certain, and I'll repeat this, the purchasing power of the dollar is mathematically guaranteed to decrease, just as it has. As Jennifer pointed out, true inflation is closer to 17%, not this 2-3% garbage, which they preach on the television. They're criminals. Let's not forget that. Don't underestimate the criminals. And the purchasing power of Bitcoin is mathematically guaranteed to continue to increase. So stop saving in dollars and start saving in the hardest money to ever exist. That's unwittable, unconfiscatable, uncorruptible, and immutable. And that's Bitcoin. It's perfect money. It's pristine collateral. Every bank in the world, every institution will eventually want it, and they want to be holding it on their balance sheet. In fact, Wall Street's already fighting to be able to self-custody their own Bitcoin so they don't have to use custodians such as Coinbase. Coinbase now has over 1 million biddies in which they are custodying for institutions such as BlackRock and what's the other one? Grayscale, GBTC. I think Fidelity is the only major institution actually practicing self-custody. So shout out to Fidelity, the $4.5 trillion asset manager. In fact, that asset manager I think is the most bullish on Bitcoin because their head of macro, Jurrien Timmer, is the one that predicted a $1 billion Bitcoin price by the year 2038. And that's because they believe the dollar will hyperinflate virtually to nothing. All fiat currencies eventually go to zero against the biddy. Bitcoin is the apex predator. Why would you trade the apex predator for the inferior currency, which will eventually go to zero? That's what you need to think about. So let me know your thoughts. I'm curious, when will Bitcoin hit 7 figures? When will Bitcoin hit 6 figures? When will we have our 100K fiesta right here in Puerto Rico? Holla at your boy.